Margo!
Birthday girl!
Woo! All right, so I'm so excited. I have a phenomenal writers panel here tonight. So I'll just kind of go down the line, introduce all of them. I might stop and ask an individual question just based on your bio, because there was some really, really beautifully descriptive bios. I had to kind of cut some down for time, but I'm like, these people are writers, you can tell. Jokes hidden in all the bios, everything. It was like a little short. It was great. So I'll start off. On the end, we have Annie Nishida, correct? Yes. Staff writer for Disney's Gabby Duran in Unsittables. And let's see, Miss Annie. They is a writer, illustrator, and activist from San Gabriel Valley, California. Nice. I believe you're fourth generation Japanese American and fourth generation Angelino. You got some strong roots, girl. Strong roots. While studying screenwriting at USC's School of Cinematic Arts, she pitched projects to Adult Swim, Fox, wrote 2 stage plays, was nominated for the Humanitas Prizes Angel Comedy Fellowship. So can you say that for me? Did I say that?
Yes, you're good.
I did. What is that?
It's like a fellowship that I think it celebrates scripts that bring out humanity.
But it's a big deal.
Amazing. What did you have to do for that?
Well, I wrote a script.
Okay.
Step one.
And then they submitted me, and they just told me. So
Who submitted you?
The faculty. So my
Oh
professors.
wow, that's amazing. And what happens for winning it?
I'm not sure. I think
You're here, girl. Yeah, you're here. She's here. This is the prize. Amazing. She's the winner of 2019 Innovation Screenplay Contest, celebrating Asian American stories, and is currently a writer on Disney Channel, Gabby Duran and the Unsittables. Amazing. Well, thank you for coming. All right. Next, we have Miss Liliana Granados.
Thank you for saying it.
Yes, I lived in Spain for a year. I will use that Spanish. Creative executive at Juvie Production.
Which means not a writer. But I work with a lot of writers and I read you guys all the time.
So you were never a writer?
No.
Okay, well let me read this bio just to double check that.
Yeah.
Liliana Granados is born in Mexico and raised in Los Angeles. Grew up in a family-owned beauty salon. First generation college student. Amazing. She proudly studied film and television production at the University of Southern California, where she produced several projects, including TV pilots, short films, web series, documentaries. Her experience with internships include NBC Casting, 3 Arts Entertainment, Latin World Entertainment, which allowed her to further develop projects and celebrate culture and diversity. And as a creative executive at Viola Davis's Juvie Production, she aims to build and guide the next generation of storytellers. Yes, Quinn. How did you get linked up with Miss Viola?
So I started at CAA in the mailroom, and then from there I have been really interested in the indie world, and I wanted to learn how to package and sell. Because that's where the money comes for indie. It doesn't come from studios or big production companies. It comes from international film sales. I wanted to learn that, not be in it. And so after my year came and I was at that company, I was going around town telling them about my passion, and my passion has basically been the same since school, to be in these diverse spaces. So as I was talking to friends, I had a friend at Searchlight and a friend at CAA asked me, have you heard of Juvie Productions? And I'm like, what is that? And it had all of the elements of my dream job. I applied. A girl from CAA that I knew was working there, and basically to get any job in the industry, it's like 1 year of agency experience required. So I had that under my belt, and I've always, again, been in that space, been in programs like NALIP and 11th Film Festival, so always been involved. So they're like, we want a Latina, and yeah, the rest has been history.
Amazing. Wow, and then we have Glenn Farrington.
I'm curious since I forgot to send you a bio. What you're gonna say?
let me just try and fill some in. So, from Brooklyn, New York.
That's right.
You keep that accent with you?
In an argument.
Good for you. Good for you. How about jaywalking? Are you still a fan of jaywalking?
Yes, all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I moved from Manhattan, so I feel like that's got to stay with
Well, I
me.
love the fact cars stop for you when you jaywalk out.
In New York, it's like a video game points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's Frogger the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. You're a writer, actor, known for Roswell, New Mexico. So, did you write and act on Roswell, New Mexico? Tell me.
No. I was an actor early on, mostly theatrical, off-Broadway stuff, and some commercials back when I was younger. My break was working for Disney, a show called Kickin' It, and that made my kids thrilled because they were old enough to watch the show at that time, so I was like, a hero to them, so that was great.
And how did you get that?
You remember the last strike we had? I wasn't in the WGA yet, but I knew what I wanted to do. I had just moved out here. I said, this is what I want to do, so I want to show my, solidarity. And I went out to the line, and it wasn't with the intention of the network, but that kind of just naturally happened. And I met Stephen Peterman, who was the creator of Hannah Montana, and it turned out he lived just a few blocks away from me in La Cañada, and so we hit it off. And the reason why we were becoming friends was because at that time I wanted to be a feature writer, because that's kind of what brought me out here with some deals and stuff. But so we said, good, because as long as you're not a TV guy, I don't want to, because that way we could be friends. And of course, ABC had that diversity program. I forget what they call it now, but.
They have a few great diversity programs for actors,
Right.
screenwriters.
Right. It was like we're just gonna pick it. It was
showcase.
Right. And so I said I'd like to try and do that and go into TV. So I wrote a spec script. I think it was for Modern Family spec script. And I called them up. And at that time we had spoken. Not a week would go by where we wouldn't have coffee or speak because we really hit it off. And I emailed them the script. I said, could you take a look at this just to make sure it's okay? Because I want to send it in. And then I don't hear anything. I was like, I ruined it, because he didn't want to deal with another TV guy. And a month goes by, and also I get a phone call. He goes, look, I have a meeting for you with Disney. The reason why I've been in touch with you, you should be working, and I want to make sure you're working. So go to this meeting. And I went and met a couple of execs at Disney, remember the showrunner, and I got hired.
Amazing.
And it was all from just, wanting to have the passion to be out here and do it. And of course, once I got into kids comedy, I realized it was the one thing I didn't want to do. Although
you don't know until you do it.
Right. When you're first, you get your card, your first table, your first, it's a great experience. But then you realize, but we were fortunate. If you ever watched Kickin' It, we wrote for adults, not for kids. That was kind of the key to really successful kids shows anyway. So I was very happy to find that out. But I knew that I wanted to pull towards drama, so I told my agents and my manager that I wanted to do drama. And 5 years later, I finally got on the show. So.
Amazing. Very nice. Next on our list, we have Miss Erica Rosby?
It rhymes with Cosby, but that's
Rosby.
sad to talk about.
Well, we cut the lead out of that, so we go straight to Rosby. She is a writer for Rick and Morty. And let's see, Erica, along with her writing partner, Sarah Carbiner.
Yeah.
Nice! Is currently working on a new pilot for UCP and an animated feature for Warner Animation Group. She also wrote for Amazon's Homecoming, FX's You're the Worst, Adult Swim's Rick and Morty, and she hails from Michigan and Canada. Amazing. So were you born in Canada first?
She's
US?
born in Canada. Moved to Beverly Hills from the middle of nowhere, Canada, and then we moved to Michigan because Beverly Hills is insane.
So do you have dual citizenship?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's the escape plan. That was my health insurance for a while.
God bless you.
All across the board.
Right? Take me on your backpack. I guess, wow, so what's it like, writing for animation versus, real people?
Yeah, it's one of those things like on the first show we were on was this kid show where they were breaking down the budgets and they were like, okay, so we can either have a crow because there was like some supernatural stuff, so we can have a crow or we can have a Ferris wheel. So it's like a crow costs like $2,000 a day with a handler and stuff, or a Ferris wheel with whatever. And then you get into animation, you're like, I can do whatever I want, we're on Mars. But you don't realize that if you have a crowd scene in the stadium on Mars, that is a whole bunch of like design. So it's like, it's just a different kind of budgetary constraint because there is still a lot of like, just like money and time that goes into animating all these different sequences and stuff. So yeah, that's sort of, I guess, the biggest thing is that you can set something on Mars, but you're still limited in some other ways.
Wow. And so did you start off writing in animation first?
No, had never written. We had a pilot that could have been seen as animation. We wrote it as live action, but it was just a sample that made a lot of sense for Rick and Morty. So that's how we ended up getting staffed on that.
Amazing. Very great. And then I will introduce my final guest on this panel. Do you guys want to like move closer, Trish, so you can get like a good? I mean, I just went to the salon. I got my hair done, but their faces are better to look at. Okay, and my last on the panel is Christopher Ansel.
Yep.
Nice.
Hi.
Right, hi. Writer for The Good Place and Netflix's On My Block. Amazing. Let's see. You had one of the funniest bios. It's filled with jokes.
Pressure.
Looks
like you crossed out.
I did because we're on a time budget, right? I'm like, to me, you were really funny. I wish you guys could have laughed with me. He is a comedy writer from a small town. He wrote for plays in high school, MC beauty pageants, and college. Became an NBC page afterwards. What does that mean?
NBC page is like an assistant to like basically all different departments of NBC. If you've ever seen 30 Rock, it's like the dorky kid who's always giving tours. That's what that is.
Amazing. Okay, great. And how was MCing beauty pageants?
I mean, I liked it.
Yeah.
Everybody was beautiful. I was like, I tried to make jokes, and then afterwards, they wouldn't talk to me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so it's fine.
Oh, man. Let's see, 5 years later, he spent years as a writer's assistant, and 5 years later, Christopher has written for On the Block, The Good Place. Christopher is currently developing a series based on his childhood for Disney. How did you get them to write a series based on your childhood? Tell me.
Well, I just forced them to write it. No, they. I was like a shitty kid as a kid, and they only do like really like good kid shows, and they really like attach themselves to me being like this troubled kid who has to like become a better person and like learn to love his family and embrace his culture. And they were like, oh yeah, we need like a bad kid, and then. Now that Disney Plus has launched and everything, they're like, I don't know if we need a bad kid. But they're, I'm supposed to hear in about a week or so whether it's a series or it is just something that happened to me for the past year. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
No, it's good.
Yeah, it's like amazing, but your heart sinks while you're waiting for that anticipation.
Sure.
All right, I'll circle back and so have you been a writer your whole life from you walked out of the womb and with a pencil or a typewriter? How did you really, what are the steps that really got you to where you are now and what you're working on? And
so I always wanted to write. When I was young, I thought you could only be a journalist. So that's what I wanted to do for a very long time. Throughout high school, and then my senior year, I developed a crush on this boy, and
it always starts with a boy, man.
It does.
Or a girl, either or.
So I asked him where he was applying for college, and he said USC Film School, and I was like, oh, cool, me too. So I put together a portfolio, which was like 30 pages of like creative writing that I had not done before. So I did that. I got in, and he did not. But I went anyway. So
did he visit?
No. He didn't even like me. Like, it was a thing. But my mom did see him at the grocery store in our hometown the other day, and he's still alive.
Oh, I thought he was working there.
No. He might have been. Not as. So yeah, I went to USC screenwriting program, graduated, worked in an ice cream shop, worked as a photo booth attendant, had like these random jobs all while I was writing and just like making weird stuff the whole time, because I was just under the impression that if you like made something cool, like someone would eventually notice, and that's what happened. Like I got an agent, I got a manager. Literally a week after I got the agent, I got hired for the job that I'm on right now.
Wow.
So,
Amazing. And so what's that job that you're on right now?
Disney.
Disney. How is it, is this still your first staff writing position?
Yes.
How is that like?
My room is amazing. I love everyone. Like sincerely, I love everyone, which is rare. So I've been told, especially at Disney with some people. But I love it. My shorters are great. 2 weeks in, I had to ask for everyone's titles because I did not know like who was a staff writer, who was a story editor, who was a co-producer. There was no hierarchy. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's a good room.
Amazing. So, also we just had, everything with WGA and all of that. I guess as a newer writer in any of I'm not as versed on everything that kind of happened when we kind of had the separation with that. I guess as someone who's newer in the industry, how was that for you versus, people who are been through other strikes and have some experience with that? How was that dealing with that?
Yeah. So I was very lucky. The agency that I'm with signed the code of conduct. So
Nice.
good. I'm not a scab. They're good. They're good. But I heard that there might be a strike next year.
March.
I was like, oh, cool. I didn't even think about that. Sick. Might not be working then, but okay. So yeah.
It's always in time for staffing season, always.
Yeah.
And I guess, Lilia, how closely do you work with writers in packaging, or who do you work most closely with?
I can't say one versus the other because it depends where the project is.
Okay.
So we can option a book, and then we will reach out to writers and take pictures and see how they will adapt that book into a screenplay. Or the other way around, we're meeting writers, they have a project that we like, their agent submits it, and we might take it on. So then it's a matter of finding the director and then finding the actors, but it depends on what stage. I personally have sort of made it my goal. I geek out on a good sample, so it's about, and I don't work in TV, so once I like a writer, either we're making their project or I'm just keeping them in my pocket for later. But whereas TV, it's like, I like this writer, we're gonna staff, and you're able to work with all of your best friends. For us, it's we can only have so many projects on our slate.
How many projects do you have on your slate?
About 20
Okay.
different stages.
Is that a lot for you, or
It's
normal?
a lot for
like...
2 people.
Okay.
It's we have a small bandwidth, but we're doing it with other producing partners. We're doing it with various studios. So again, we can have out of those 23 that go next year, but the one that's a book will take maybe 5 years to get made, and then the studio might be like, well, never mind. I don't want to do it now. So it's all about having enough to keep the machine going.
What does your day-to-day look like? Like, what are you personally doing on a day-to-day, and what is?
Yeah, it depends. Again, there's a lot of meetings, so I'll start my day with like maybe a breakfast meeting with either an agent, a manager, or a filmmaker. I try and make them come to me and be like, you have a flexible schedule, come meet me in the morning. And then it will continue to, and I'm like the lowest level of executives, like I'm a baby exec. So it's a lot of support. So I'm tracking if there's a call and we're bouncing off ideas of who can we ask to direct this, it's tracking all of those people and maybe saying, hey, I met someone recently from USC who has their first feature. Let's pitch them for this. The studio won't want to, bet $60 million on this like very small indie filmmaker, but our company is very much about bringing a light and like uplifting these people. So okay, they said no, but now they know who it is. Now we made them watch their film. Now they're on their list. So a lot of calls, again, bouncing off ideas. That person's not available. We'll go to this next person. Meeting writers, meeting directors, and working on notes. So maybe we'll have a project again, a script that needs revisions, and I'm writing up, notes on the characters or the setting or, budget constraints. So it changes day by day. Once you get into production, you're watching dailies, and you can be on set, but right now we're pushing towards that step.
Have you had a lot of mentors that like really were able to show you and guide you through, being this baby executive to like how to do things right or not right, but like how to make fewer mistakes and try and help you along and
I think
learn?
My boss and the company is very much open to, even interns, I bring them to my meetings if I can. So we're very open in that sense. But in terms of mentors, I've had a lot of people who have helped me here and there, but I'm actually looking and, I'm like, I need to make those 10 scary phone calls. Because it's one thing, it's different and I also have to be like, okay, if I have a mentor, maybe I can have two and it's not cheating on someone. Like, you want someone to, someone who can potentially mentor me in the production world and someone who can mentor me in, the sort of development side of it. So yeah, I try to take nuggets from anyone. It can be, again, my intern can say something brilliant and I'm always like learning.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Glenn, you had mentioned, the first strike, and that's how you met, the person who got you the first job. How is it going through? How have you kept yourself like stable through all the ups and downs of
Stable.
Yeah, I don't know. Relatively, I'm not saying
I
mentally
write for
stable,
TV.
but yeah, exactly.
Every job's a temp job.
So how do you manage that? What do you do to keep yourself sane? What do you keep working on? How do you keep yourself busy? And
Well, interestingly enough, and it's highly ironic that I'm on sharing the days with these two people because my off time with my family helps support everything else that I have to deal with. So the time I spent with them is very important. And literally all we've done for the last 2 weeks is watch The Good Place and Rick and Morty.
Amazing.
Watch the premiere, and it was like, so hearing that, I was very jazzed. My kids are going to be, once again, very impressed when I meet people like this. But really what gets me through is, and I can't stress this enough, it's always going to be down to networking. It's always people you know. Your talent will get you in the door, but the person on the other side of the table is always thinking, is this someone I can spend time with? Mm-hmm. That's what's more important to them. And then, after a while, you just establish the people you want to like. I was a professional comedian, that's how I started. And Bill Engvall just called me up a month ago and said, hey, they want to develop this pilot, do you want to write it? I'm like, I'm not working right now, so yes. So that's kind of what's got me now going in that interim period between seasons, whether it gets picked up or not or anything like that. And that whole platform's changed now because in the past, when you worked on a show, that your residuals, when it would re-air, were going to help get you through to the next show. Yeah. Now they don't re-air it on the network or the cable show, they'll put it on a streaming channel. So now the check that used to come to your house that was this big is this big. So now you've got to constantly think of that during the year you're on the show. Oh, wow. Maybe you won't take that trip to such and such place, and you won't go to Porto's every week. But so you have to. It's always a balance of the finances because you're always thinking, this is something I want to build on. I come from a background where I've always kind of developed companies, so I always have something in the future thinking, how can I piggyback and not just work on this? If you've ever been on a cruise ship, anyone's ever been on a cruise ship? Mm-hmm. Do you use the internet on the cruise ship? The internet cafe?
No, it costs $5,000 a minute.
Oh, I'm very happy. I'm the one who put it on the ship. So. I started Digital Seas. I put all the internet cafes and all the cruise ships in the world.
Nice.
And so when I sold that company, that's what made me decide what's next. And I was in Florida, my office, bored as hell, and I loved it. My father was a writer, but it was self-published. But I always wanted to write, so I was always writing scripts, mostly horror and sci-fi at that point. And that's when I decided, I want to go out to LA and try it. And naive, I submitted to all these contests out here, thinking, hey, this is great, and I was winning some, and they fly you out and all this, it is what it is, let's put it that way. But I was fortunate enough for the fading contest that I met my manager, and my manager said, you gotta get your butt out here, you have to live
You
here.
gotta be here.
And so it was interesting telling my wife, see this big, beautiful home? Let's go live in this, in the suburb
And
in
it costs
LA.
the same.
No,
More, yes.
But it was the best decision we ever made. My wife is in TV, and my son just graduated Chapman, so he wants to be a director. My daughter's in high school; she wants to only do a video editor. I wanted one doctor, one lawyer, nothing. So we're all in this mixed world together. So my support really comes from constantly trying to network with people to see, hey, what do you do? Is this something we could do together? And you got to be careful with that too. But you pick and choose what you want to do. But I was fortunate at the time. I was like, what's next? I got that phone call from my friend Bill. So, development is, you never know what's going to go with that. But
Are you at a point where you are mentoring other writers, or how do you still find your mentors? And how the people you look up to.
It's interesting you said that, because I'm at a point in my life now where I want to do more of that.
Yeah.
Because I look back at my life, and everything that I've done, I was very big. I was a professional magician. I was a comedian.
Wow.
I was an NYPD officer. I did some work for the CIA. I've done a lot of things. I became a businessman. My father was a businessman, and so I did Digital Seeds. He was very impressed with that. I need to apologize. I had all this dental work done today, and I feel like my mouth isn't moving like the way my brain would like it to.
It's okay, it plays into the New York accent where you're
I
like,
can
I'll
do that. I
have
can
to
talk like this for a while, but I can pronounce milk. When I really fall with milk, and I always say milk. That's how my wife knows something's irritating her. But I forget what the question was.
Are you looking for people to mentor, or how do you still find
Yes.
mentors?
Stephen Peterman is my mentor. He's my mentor. Because he was the one that recognized you can do this. And he would teach me structure and things that you wind up learning more in the room once you're on a show. And once because it's great being great in the room, but you need to be great on the page too, and you have to. So it's a learning experience, but he really helped me through. And I was a stand-up comic, so it was easy to understand how to get to the blow, the end of a scene, the funniest part, the end of a scene, and how to lead up to it, make sure it's always the protagonist's, journey that makes it happen. So he helped me through all that. But when I went into drama, he's like, don't know what to tell you. But these days it's more like dramedy. And so I was able to kind of bridge that gap. But I'm always like, on Roswell, one of our PAs, actually she was a writer's assistant. Nobody was throwing her any work. And so I went to the show and I said, look, can I have her write one of the scenes of my episode? And it was a huge thing for her. She was like, God, thank you. This is why I'm here. And so she got to write a scene, and actually most of it went into the episode.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to, and once she did that, it was the same day that an executive from Disney was coming to visit me, who was in charge of the diversity program, and I introduced them together, and she was able to get some work from that. So I always look to help someone else, because someone's always helped me. Mm-hmm. I've been trying to do I try to read people's scripts whenever I can, but I think I've gotten to that point, which I'm sure we've all gotten to, where you just can't anymore, because A, it's a time constraint. People think it's like it's so easy to just read my script, you can't. And B, most of the scripts are terrible. Okay? But every once in a while, one comes through. And that's the one you want to go, okay, here's what you can do, and change this and that. I mean, if you're a close friend, I'll sit through no matter how good or bad it is. But
He's lying.
No, close friends, I'll help anyone. My inner circle, I'm in, because that's what it's all about. That's the group you want to die with. But anyone on the outside, I'll help if I see that there's something there to help. impart to everyone else. Then we'll have a day that's on structure, a day that's on comedy, a day on drama. So I want to do that and find people out there. Hopefully, that's something they connect to and can help.
Amazing. And Erica, I mean, we mentioned your writing partner. Have you also always been someone who wanted to write? How did you find a writing partner? Because some people are writers and they are writing by themselves constantly and would love to find someone that they mesh with.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about for you?
Yeah, I was always writing, like, in high school. It was terrible poetry, and then terrible slam poetry, and then short plays and stuff. But, and then in college we met, I was stage managing a play, and I had to go, like, home for a funeral, and so the assistant stage manager stepped in, and that was my writing partner. And I told her to take a TV class, because we didn't have TV classes at our college at that time, or there was only a couple. And I was like, definitely do this. Because she was a couple of years behind me in school, and then we ended up working at a video game company together, and we just were constantly reading each other's scripts and giving each other's notes, and we liked each other's notes, and then we're like, should we try to just like do this together? And we'd always heard from a teacher in school, if you can find a partner, it's a deal, because you're literally splitting a salary. So when you don't have any writing work yet, you're like, oh, that'd be amazing, I'd love to split that salary. And then after a couple of years, you're like, wait a minute, we're splitting the salary.
Yeah.
But it's still totally worth it. But it is just like something I think not to enter into lightly, because you really have to vibe with that person. You know, it is definitely like another marriage, and almost more intense because you're sharing your artistic vision. So like find a writing partner, but definitely vet them.
I mean, once you have a writing partner, can't you still write on your own, or is it like marriage, like you do everything together?
You can write on your own, but everyone who's either you've been on, like if they've read something previous of yours, then they see you as a team, they don't know sort of like who brought what. So it is like starting over if you do decide to split your ways. So you'd have to rewrite your own samples. You'd have to sort of like divorce. You'd have to divide up. Okay, which executive do I get Liliana or does Sarah get? You know, so it's like new footing.
Wow. And I mean, you write for animation, which still just fascinates me, because you said you really kind of have this broader spectrum of being like, I wonder what that chair is gonna say, or like, more inanimate objects or animals. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how does that begin to start for you, and has your imagination really had to open up so much more because of that, or is it just like that chair is now a person and his name is Bob, and now I can know what he's gonna say?
Yeah, well, that was definitely a thing on Rick and Morty, because like it's such a world where sort of anything can happen, but at the same time, anything shouldn't happen, because you should like structure things into a very satisfying story that at the same time is super fun. So we actually, even because I only worked on third season, I haven't worked on this one that's coming out, which is awesome. I've been watching it. But we'd have these ideas, but then that's too close to this thing that happened in season 1, and we have to like Simpsons did it because Simpsons has done everything, or Futurama did it more for Rick and Morty. So what starts off as this huge blank canvas becomes this very, very narrow little rail that you're like, okay, we can do this, but we can't do this, and it's like big, but then it gets very small too.
And with the writing partners, how have you guys tried to get into rooms? I mean, I know social media is huge with Twitter and staffing off Twitter and everything. What do you and your writing partner actively do together to, try and get into rooms, and how do you tag team that?
We were lucky in that our representation was just awesome and super into staffing. One of the reasons why I think this big action, I'm a show captain too, so I know way too much about the whole WG. You're like the person for your room that like goes and talks to just gets the information, tells everybody like, okay, we're still
Did you raise your hand? Volunteer?
I did, because there was a big meeting at the Sheraton, so I was like, well, I'm going, so I can do this. And then it's like a year later, and yeah, it's all madness, and everyone's really freaked out. But and also chill. A lot of people are chill too. But what am I supposed to say? What was the question? Oh, staffing. So,
Yeah.
yes. So our reps actually were super into staffing, and then now in this world without reps, we've been able to, or we still have managers, so they put us up for our last job. So it's usually just like them having an eye on what shows are ready, because we work mostly in cable and streaming where just cycles are insane. There's always something kind of staffing or falling apart and stuff. So there's no like, oh, it's staffing season for us. It's just year-round madness. So yeah, we've been lucky in that when shows have ended, then our reps tell us about a new one. So.
Have you guys ever disagreed about anything? You know, maybe going on a show, like one of you didn't want to be a part of a show, or I mean, what's the time where you guys really butted heads and?
Yeah, we're lucky in that we've been on the same page on most shows. Sometimes we'll waver, but I think, yeah, we just really align on taste. Sometimes I'm like, hey, should we do this side project? One of us will be like, no, the other one will be like, let's just do it. So we try to like, if someone's just very passionate about it, then it's like, okay, let's do it. But.
That's great.
The Good Place is a very like diverse room.
Amazing.
Like Mike is like Mike Schur is very much like into like finding new writers and voices and giving them a space, which has been great. Like he always found people for Parks and Rec and The Good Place. And yeah, we just connected because I got that job based on a sample I'd written, which is now turning into that Disney Plus show.
Okay.
The show, The Good Place, if nobody has seen it, is about a woman who winds up in a place that she dies and winds up in a place that she thinks is heaven and
It's absolutely
realizes,
not.
But yes, and she is like a bad person who does not belong. So she has to figure out a way to get better.
Wait a second. Is there someone here who hasn't seen The Good
The
Place?
Good Place is phenomenal.
Right.
Okay.
Everyone.
Homework.
Raise your hand if you've seen The Good
Homework.
Place. Yeah. Oh my God.
4 people. Good. There's a lot of shows. I get it. Yeah. So my sample was basically something about a kid who's bad, who gets thrown in. Like I get tossed into Mexico to like embrace my culture and stop being such an asshole. And, like,
That's a great concept.
yeah. And then this really happened to me as a kid, and I just lived in Mexico and wandered the streets, and then realized I had to become a better person. And then so towards that, 'cause it was very much Eleanor's story, and then so that's this show.
Wow.
Right.
Well, so then I guess how are you actively, you know, joining other diverse groups? I know Naleep is a great one.
Sure. Yeah. I did a writing program called the NHMC,
Yes.
which is like sponsored by like NBC and ABC, and I was a part of that. It's like a writing program. It's like 10 weeks, and like in 10 weeks you write a pilot. Like maybe it's 5 weeks. It felt like it was 10 weeks, but it was like 5 weeks, and you write a pilot really fast. You table it, and then you rewrite it, and then by the end of 5 weeks you have something that's like kind of good.
Oh wow.
Hopefully. And yeah, so I was part of that. I'm always like open to like reading like any Latinx script that anybody wants to send or whatever. Again, like reading scripts takes so much time.
Yeah.
But
To especially like give good notes and
sure,
do.
yeah. And a lot of people send me dramas, but like I love watching dramas. I'm really terrible giving notes on dramas.
Are your like notes just jokes?
Yeah, which they don't make any sense for that show. So like, sorry. I'm just apologizing for my notes. But yeah, so I'm always open to like helping people, and like I was an assistant for like 7 years, and
What was that like?
that was fun. It's different every time. Like you can have a really nice person, you can have a really terrible person, you can do nothing and work on your own stuff, or you can do so much to where you literally have no bandwidth to do any of your own stuff. It's better to have a job with somebody nice that lets you do your own stuff and lets you pitch, and the other side is that other side, which is bad.
And how do you cope like with the other side of it then, you know, like how do you find time to work on your own projects? How do you, you know, work through that in pain, but, you know, develop yourself where you're like, okay, this has built me, and I, you know.
Get there earlier, stay there later, and you're already the person that's there the longest, so it's the hardest.
Yeah.
But you gotta do it.
Yeah.
You have to keep writing. I wrote like 20 or 30 things in the last like 10 years, but like at the time you're like, oh, just this thing, and then it just like amasses into this huge collection, and you're like, oh, like a lot of that stuff is garbage. You have to like get through the garbage.
Yep.
And a lot of people ask me, like, what do you choose to write? And I think that was like a big thing for me. I always, in the beginning, it was always like, what's cool? What do people want? Blah, blah, blah. And then once I started figuring out that it's like, what do I want to write? And what is something like sad or happy that's happened in my life? Like the thing about me getting dumped to Mexico, it was very much like I had never gone to therapy about it and didn't want to talk to anybody about it. And then like talk to somebody and they're like, that's so funny. I was like, that's the saddest shit that's ever happened. I'm like, write that. My parents were like on a blind date. My mom got pregnant. She was in the country illegally. She was like, my dad thought he met the woman, like the love of his life. She got deported and he was like, did she like just like stop talking to me completely? And then like he found out she was deported, like went down, married her, brought her back, and then like everyone was like, you gotta write that show. I'm like, nah. And then last night I was like, fuck it, and then I just started writing. The first 5 pages is them like graphically having sex, so that's what I did in the title. Write what like is uncomfortable for you to write it. That was very uncomfortable for me.
Can you talk more about a voice or advice in finding your voice? Obviously, someone was like, write what's uncomfortable, but what are other ways in which your journey of your voice? How has your voice as a writer changed?
How has my voice as a writer changed? I think like whenever I'm meeting anybody that like can hire me or wants to make something, they're always like, what character in this is you, or what through this idea is your voice kind of shining through? And I think in the beginning I was just like, well, I'll just like write like a Seinfeld or a Friends, and then like those people aren't really me, even though some of the jokes seem like they're coming from me. But like having something that's happened to you, having something you're going through, I think just finding something that like connects you. Like if you're like a rich billionaire, and like you can write an Iron Man movie, of course you know it. But like something like, no, is anybody a rich billionaire? Anyway, but like something like that. I feel like, do you guys all write personal stuff? Yes? Okay, good. I think that, like, it's hard to write about yourself because you're also living it, and so you're like, fuck, nobody wants to know about me. Yeah. But then once you start, I feel like the executive or whoever's listening to it knows that you're living it and going through it, and then they connect to you connecting to it, so that's kind of, yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I would love to hear how each of you found your voice, and your voice still is like, the projects in which, you're drawn to and kind of your development in that. Can you each talk about how your voice has changed as a writer and also impact your development?
Let's see. I feel like I'm also an illustrator, so I make cute little comics that deal with like mental health and like identity and stuff, and I feel like that really helped me, especially knowing that people are actually going to see it and it's not a script that someone is just going to like throw into the garbage. So that helped a lot, and let's see. I like to write things that only I can write, which, I mean, it just makes things very personal, and then if someone reads it, they're like, oh, like, that's so specific. Like, I haven't seen that before, like, that's just, yeah.
Nice.
For myself, I would translate voice into taste. And the bio, I think sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, why do I have like this thing on my LinkedIn? Like, I grew up in a beauty salon, but to me that means that I was exposed to people walking in from different walks of life. And for me, it was a yearning to see their stories on the big screen, which I didn't, and I feel like still to this day I don't. So when I read something, it is very much noticing, I haven't read this before, and part of the company's mission and part of mine is to be the voice of the voiceless. So it's not just about race, ethnicity, it's also sexual orientation, socioeconomic standing, a lot of subcultures, something that's just so specific that it's also universal because we all feel. And there's a spectrum of emotions that we all feel. We all talk about it differently. And how is this script talking about those emotions? What is that culture specificity that's coming into the story to bring it to life through a different lens? So that's part of my taste. and I'm still building it, you know, like how can I see this in
Changes
sci-fi?
as you evolve as
Yeah.
well, and how you're,
How can I see this in sci-fi? How can I see this specificity in comedy? So yeah.
It's really commendable, it really is. I'm glad there are people like you doing that, because that has not been the case for many years, so I'm glad to hear that.
Thank
Really
you.
is. For me, it was interesting because I had to find different voices. I started in comedy, and then I went to drama and dramedy, and now people are pulling me into animation, so that's going to be a whole new world, which I'll probably be talking to you about. But for comedy, my manager really gave me the best tip I ever had about funny, because your voice, when you hear the term your voice, it's really how you sound on the page, how they can read this script and this script and tell which one of the two scripts was the one you wrote.
Yeah.
That's your voice. And the best tip he gave me, he sent me an Eddie Murphy movie that I was like, the script, I remember I didn't want, was it Egbert or Norbert, right?
Norbert?
And I was like, why are you sending me this? I don't want to read it. And I know Eddie, but it just wasn't my thing, you know? And he goes, no, I want you to read it. I'm fine, I read it. He goes, what'd you learn? I go, what'd you want me to learn? Because it was a script, and there was some great moments and bad moments. He goes, exposition. You wanted people to hear your voice? Did you notice the exposition was just as funny as the dialogue? That's why I sent it to you. If you can get people to laugh at it, because a lot of people do something called reading down the middle, where they just do the dialogue. Because if they're bored of the exposition, they're not going to read the exposition. They'll just go right down. You grab them in the exposition, which is really the heart and root of the story that moves everything along, that's where you get them. So I do all these little, that's where my voice comes out. It comes out in the exposition because the character voices are something completely different than mine. It's my take on how they would say it, but exposition, that's all you. So that's where you can have fun. If you want to see a script that really teaches that, any Quentin Tarantino script. Because his exposition, she reaches over and grabs a motherfucking knife. That's what he wrote. And of course he could do that. We can't. But, well, we can a little bit more now. But when I went into drama, I had to change my voice again because I couldn't be that jokey guy, And what I found for drama was it had to be more personal. And it's interesting when you said it. The more uncomfortable you are, you're there. If you're like, ugh, you're kind of there when you're writing. So my grandfather was a very famous black pool hustler. He was a postman during the day, but at night he was a pool hustler. And he was always very pissed off. I spent my summers with my grandparents, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, he'd wake me up, and we'd go downstairs, we'd make breakfast sandwiches, and go into the basement, and around 2, 3 in the morning, all the hustlers from the area would pay homage to my grandfather, who was the Duke. All the dice cheats, all the card cheats, all the pool hustlers, they came over. I learned how to deal from the bottom of the deck since I was 7, all right? I now do it for magic, because I do it for good, but all the hard work I learned was all hustling shit. But my grandfather always told stories how pissed he was that he was never invited to go to invitational pool tournaments. The reason why they made most, even to this day, some pool tournaments are invitational, was to keep people of color out. Back then it was to keep any black people out. And my grandfather, by the way, was the blackest black man I've ever seen. In our world, the blue black, right? I'm half black, just so we but he was not passing the brown paper bag test, let's put it that way. And he was always very pissed off about the fact that here's a guy that white players from all over the world would come to try and beat, but he couldn't be invited to an invitational tournament to show how great he was. So what he did is he mentored a bunch of young players. He called them his night sharks. And during the summer, when he was off on vacation time from working in the post office, he traveled the invitational tournament, had a friend of his that was white playing in the tournament, and set up money games at night to play him and his sharks. And what he did was something very unique. They said, we're not here to con you, we're not here to hustle you, we're here to beat you. If you're going to walk into that pool hall, you're going to lose. And of course, every white guy's like, going to lose, that's not going to happen. My grandfather owned apartment buildings, the first bank in Brooklyn for a black-owned bank. My grandfather and his night sharks owned property all over New York from their winnings. for years, from the time for the mid '60s to the early '60s to the mid '70s, anything you ever seen from Minnesota Fats, all those people that were winning those tournaments, all the money they made during the day, they lost at night to my grandfather and his night sharks. So that was the first script pilot that I wrote to try and break into drama. And the whole time, and it sucks, my grandfather's gone, so there's so much I wanted to ask, but I had to do all the memories when I was a kid.
Wow.
And then, it just grew into life of its own, and all of a sudden I saw where the exposition was just like, wow, it was so intense that you almost getting to the dialogue was a relief. And that also became another voice. Because my agent as a manager was like, you're working in comedy, why are you doing this? This is going to be, and it took a long time to convince people, but it took that script.
Yeah.
And once that went out, that did it.
Wow.
Of course, when that went out was at a time before they would even have all black cast. Now it's a whole different thing, and now it's coming out as a graphic novel because they wanted me to pitch it again. Said no, I want to own the IP.
Yeah. Yes.
Take it out.
Yes, absolutely. And well, I guess we'll end with the partner team voice. How does that change?
Yeah, I think we had our individual voices, and then we tried to come together as a Voltron to or two-person Voltron. But yeah, to make that work. And it was kind of the same thing where before we we were doing so many things trying to scrape into the industry, so we were like, we can write this, we can write that and stuff, and all these things of mimicking other people's voices. Some producer wanted to write a show about strippers that commuted from LA to Vegas, and we're like, sure, we know nothing about that, but kind of thing. But it was these things of doing things that weren't actually personal or interesting to, they were interesting to us, but it wasn't where they weren't coming from a personal place, so it's sort of wondering why that doesn't latch on. And then sort of the most recent thing that we're trying to sell now was something that was just a very personal story that we couldn't have possibly pitched. And then we just wrote it as a spec, and that is that's the story that the most people have been affected by, because it was just something that was from our own lives. But
Nice. And well, I'm here with writing for Disney. How do you have to? Is it hard to kind of cater to children? Do you does your show write for adults as his show does, or is it?
Yes.
How do you do that? How do you write for kids? Talk to us about that.
My first manager was like, you should just write kids shows, and I was like, fuck no, I hate kids. I have a kid, I don't hate kids. But,
He's like, I like my kids.
Yeah, my kid's great. But for this show, I very much pitched it for a whole family, a blackish or a mixed-ish, and I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh, I want kids to really watch this, but I was also. Now, through the development process, you're getting so many notes to where they're age it down, less sexy, less everything edgy. And so now, you're kind of just holding on to what you love about it and what you wanted to say in the beginning. And so I still think it's a very funny, good show, and I'm not worried about kids liking it. I think it's going to find an audience, and yeah. I'm not thinking about it.
It's going to get a bigger audience. That's a great concept. It really is.
Sure. Yeah.
Amazing.
So.
Perfect.
Anyway.
Well, if you guys have questions, we're going to have you meet them in the lobby for questions while we take a little break before we start the next panel. If everyone can give this panel a round of